Welcome to the Paru Zings, Appraisers on Purpose podcast. This podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? And what do they do now for their teams, their clients, and the industry? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Welcome back. We are so excited that you're with us for another episode here in Season 2 of Perusing the Power of Values. Once again, we have an esteemed and accomplished peer and guest, and we're going to tell you a lot about him. We're going to hear a lot from Pete himself. But before we introduce him, just want to say, wow, what some great feedback. Really want to thank Ronnie. Ronnie, that was such an insightful experience that you had. I encourage everyone else to do the same. He had shared it with a couple of his clients, and they got positive feedback. And as we heard from a previous Season 2 guest, you know, when you do a little bit to help others, they in turn want to help you out. So spread the wealth and go create some value out there that has people think well of you. Because we all need a little more of that in this current economic time. But shedding a different light on a way through the profession, I am excited to say hello and thank you, Pete Gallo, for joining us today. And we like to ask our opening question. So were you born this way, or how did you get into the profession?
It's funny because when I went to college, I started as a computer science major. And very soon after, I found out that probably was not the curriculum for me. So I took one of those personality tests or career tests. And when it was done, the results were I was either going to be a race car driver or a sergeant in the Army.
Oh, wow.
So I wound up communications and English degree I graduated with. And coming out with that kind of a general degree, I really didn't have any kind of direction as to where I wanted to go. I was putting out a lot of resumes to Coca-Cola and to, wherever I had public relations kind of education and couldn't find anything. So my dad had previously worked at the Federal Reserve branch in Buffalo. So I wound up being able through his connections to get a job at the Federal Reserve, just a check processing job. And one of my buddies who I graduated with got into appraising. He was working in Buffalo and he was doing tax revaluation work. So he's like, hey, my company, they're bidding on a job and they need help. They're looking for people. Would you want to interview? So I did. I got the job, and they actually lost the job that I got hired for to do for a township. So I wound up, they hired 4 people. They kept 2 of us, and they shifted us to their commercial section. And so I started driving around doing research and comparables for a guy that I was working under. And then they also had a residential division. They needed help there. So I interviewed with the residential side, and they put me on with the residential side because they needed more help than the commercial side. So that's how I got started. In the first half of the year that I started, I was making great money. And then the second full year up, the money was great. I was doing, we were doing a lot of production. It was all very production based. You could move a lot of appraisals, but I was doing all the rural work, and we dressed in suit and tie.
Oh, wow.
Can't tell you how many times I fell in the mud in my overcoat and my wingtip shoes and got stuck in snow up in Buffalo.
Wow. What was the training like when you joined that firm?
Yeah, so that was before licensing. So I started in 91, and New York State hadn't gotten their license program up yet. So it was basically, I went around with another appraiser at the firm for 2 weeks, did some inspections, and then I was handed a bunch of files. And there were about 20 other appraisers working at the firm, residential appraisers. So it was like, look in the file cabinets, ask questions, do whatever you need to do. You have the resources here to figure it out, but just go out and get going.
What a set of learning to fly on the way down with the wings.
Yeah. It was interesting though. I mean, soon thereafter, the licensing came in and everybody was very unsure about what the state required. They didn't know it was either 240 credit hours or 2 years. We weren't sure. And it was just get these classes that you need. So we all took the classes. We all submitted our applications, and you just hope that it went through. And I think for most of us, it did. We already had what we needed. So
That's fantastic. We heard from another guest in season 2 that when he showed up at a firm, maybe a little earlier than you did, they were thoughtful enough to have already done the research for him on every property he was going to appraise, and they gave him a list of all his adjustments. Oh, did they generously give you a list of all your adjustments too?
No, and I'm sure many of the real estate agents at brokers would love to have that list of adjustments because we always get asked that. No, but it was funny. We did have a lot of canned commentary. I remember there was a little printout sheet, and you would check off which commentary you wanted the office processors to include in your addendum. I remember everything was dot matrix, and I remember the monochrome screens that we had. It was like a green glow to it. Oh, wow. I remember being jealous of the new monitors that were orange, that had an orange color font as opposed to the green font.
Oh my gosh. It's such a precious gift to reflect back on those advancements in technology, which seemed so much that in hindsight were and clearly were not.
Yeah.
What was it like working in a group of 20 people in an office setting? Many people today haven't had that opportunity.
A lot of friendships. 2 of the guys, we wound up forming basement band. We found out that we were all musicians. So every Friday after work, we tried as many times as we can. We'd meet at my house, and I had a basement kind of studio. And we would go down there, and then we'd invite other people from the office to come and hang out. And I'd have a refrigerator down there full of beverages, and nice. We'd get pizza. What it did is it pushed you to work harder, I think, and stay with whatever was happening. The owners were always up on everything. They kept the work coming in. They were really the marketing people that you didn't have to worry about any of that. You could just come in and do the job. That's what I try and do at my firm now for the folks that work for me. But the first firm that I worked for was a little bit more business.
Yeah.
The second firm that I worked for was some younger guys, some younger folks, and we had like a foosball table, and it was...
Oh, wow.
It was much more relaxed. It was a lot more fun. We still got all the work done, but there was much more camaraderie there. I think we joked a lot and had a good time just during the day writing reports.
Fascinating experience. And given that you got to work in a firm that what I think I'm hearing you talk about is really specialization, where you got to focus on doing appraisal and you didn't have to handle a lot of other things, like you said, like marketing or accounting or development or what have you.
Sure, you could focus on the job of appraising and getting it right, spending your time on that. I think that I've always worked at a firm or had a firm. I worked on my own for a little while to get the business up and running, and it's tough having to do the job. But part of your marketing is the job, how well you do your job. And picking up the phone, answering the phone is something that is just like appraising an art and a science. You need to be able to talk to your clients. I know we have to defend our work. You need to do that in a way that is effective without alienating your client. And that could be, a lot of, if you're on social media in the appraiser groups, it's tough having your work criticized or having folks that aren't appraisers wanting something else out of you. And you really have to figure out how to be able to react to that and respond to that in a way that your client understands. You're the professional, you're protecting them. That's why you do what you do. The appraisal can only come out one way, and it's the way I did it. And that's because I know I'm the professional that you hired to do this.
That is a fantastic experience. I mean, and you touched on that interesting opportunity you had early on in your professional career, working at 2 firms, different culture, if you will. What did you appreciate the most from each of those cultures? Because they were quite different.
Well, the business aspect of first firm, dressing in the suit, being your appearance. I can't tell you how many times I might have been late, or there might be something that somebody didn't like about maybe what I did in a report, but presenting myself as a professional in person, and your appearance has a lot to do with that, your manner, knowing that you have to go back to an office and answer to very professional, business-like people. It matures you and it protects you. It teaches you a lesson. Being a little more relaxed firm, it allowed me to get more involved in the marketing, in the social aspect of client relations, still having and knowing the boundaries, but then also going and, letting your hair down a little bit and having a good time with your clients, and that's appreciated. And both of those qualities are appreciated by clients, and everything revolves around your client and servicing them. That's appraising is a service, and it's a service business. And you're not going to get business by a certain result in your reports, or, you might think, there's certain appraisers that we all might have dealt with where we knew their reputations for always coming in. And that's just, it's not about that. And business is not about that. It's about servicing, being a professional, but knowing kind of that balance of being able to interact socially, having friendships with your clients, but also being respected.
I think those are such important takeaways, so much jam-packed in such a short series of sentences that I think will continue to unveil how much that served you, your professional involvements and your firm along the way, which as a peer of ours in the industry might say, it's a double star and highlight kind of moment for things to keep track of and remember, which is fantastic. One of the things I really also appreciate about you, Pete, is you didn't just analyze data, you did something with the data. You did a little more than appraising early on in life. You might share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny because, in Buffalo, there were probably 5 large appraisal firms, and I enjoyed the business side of it, but there was only so much you could do since these large firms pretty much had the clients. There were only so many pieces of the pie. It wasn't like I was going to go off and start another appraisal business. And I worked at some of the top firms and like to think of myself as one of the top appraisers, but what else are you going to do? And I always liked building, Saturday morning coffee, watching This Old House, and then watching them do some renovations or something. I really enjoyed it. And I had a friend who knew construction, and his dad was a builder, and him and I got to talking over dinner. He was kind of in between jobs, and I really wanted to do the building. And when we started talking, and we started a company, we started Vision Homes, and we had some success. And it was a lot of fun, but it was tough trying to do appraising and work at a firm full time and build homes. I was hoping that it would, and we wanted to get into the luxury home building business, and that's what we did. But in Buffalo, it was hard, and there was a lot of competition. I tried to do things a little bit different and have a little bit more appeal to our houses as far as quality and design. We weren't going off stock plans. Every house was custom. We wound up having a tough time, especially after September 11th happened. The homes that we were building, they were executive kinds of homes that were relocation dependent, and that market was challenged after September 11th. So it didn't work out the way I wanted to, but it was a great experience. There's nothing like seeing a custom home come out of the ground out of nothing. It's exciting to see something just appear from nowhere when it gets framed, and even you as a builder, you're looking at the plans and you know everything in and out, but when you actually see it come together from beginning to end, and then somebody actually moving in, creating somebody's home for them, it really was vision that became a reality. And so it was pretty rewarding.
I commend you. I share that same interest and passion and that sense of creativity as well as reality that comes from. It's one thing to see it on paper. It's quite another to actually walk through the creation that started maybe as an idea or as a suggestion or as a request, and then to extend in that very space. How did that enhance your ability from an appraisal standpoint? We had the privilege over the last number of decades to talk to many people that have started an appraisal and either left or maybe stayed in it, but also because of their involvement in development or building or rehabbing or remodeling, they really talk about how it expanded their capacity and really improved their performance as an appraiser. I'd love to hear your take on that, Pete.
I think having a builder's perspective to the overall, I think it really comes into interacting with your clients and interacting with all of the players in housing, to have that perspective that you're also, hey, I've been a builder too. And to be able to talk to another builder and talk that language, know the economics of it, know what they're dealing with. I'll tell you one thing that helped me a lot with valuation and with appraising is the tax work that I did. I did work in between those two firms that I worked for. I did a stint for a little less than a year with a revaluation company. And what that threw at me was seeing a lot of data and inspecting different properties in a very short period of time, and being able to look at a neighborhood, look at a property in that neighborhood with a different perspective, knowing that you're looking at this broader market and how the one home or the one property fits into the overall market. And that I was hired once to do a review of the values, a book of values. So I would go down the street and look at each house and look at the computer printout and what the computer said the house was worth, and either put a check mark after it or revise it. And when you do, a few hundred of those at a time, you really start to be able to pull up to a house as an appraiser and go, hey, this is the perspective. I now have a perspective. I know it's not worth this, and I know it's not worth this. I know it's somewhere in between. And it kind of gets your mind working in a way maybe that it doesn't work by just appraising a single property and being so focused on the single property. It gave me more of this broader perspective. So, anything you do in and around real estate helps you as an appraiser. It gives you insight.
Couldn't agree with you more so. And I think that's one of the other fascinating attributes that you possess, which is you have gotten involved in other organizations beyond the appraisal profession. And it's, something that you've given a lot to, but it's also served you well. And you talked about how you started in Buffalo, but you mentioned it was a relatively small market, and you made a interesting, maybe even a difficult choice to leave Buffalo. How did that go?
It went well. And again, coming from Buffalo, which, was built up around the turn of the century being,
that's the other side.
Yeah, you're in a historic home every day or every week. You have access to, the houses that I used to walk into in the city of Buffalo, compared to what, you come to a new city like Charlotte, there's different benefits. So you come to Charlotte and all the railroad tracks here are actually being used. They're actually, or they're new, Buffalo, they're making biking paths out of, or the tracks are still there, and they kind of divide neighborhoods. They're kind of physical boundaries to neighborhoods. But Charlotte is exciting because it's a newer city. Certainly the climate is more moderate. We have full 4 seasons. Not that you don't get that in Buffalo. You get beautiful summers, but it's different climate-wise. I think we can all agree. Some of the snow, and that's it. Down here, everything shuts down, with a little bit of snow. Where in Buffalo, I took pride in my 4-wheel drive and being able to get to inspections no matter what the weather.
You're hunting 3 feet of snow? That's nothing. Well, of course, they're on top.
The total bragging right in the office, to be in the office when nobody else is, being able to call everybody else and go, where are you guys?
Are you stuck? There's no cell phones back then, so we have to wait till you get there. You have to call their house phone and leave what was called a recording on a machine that actually had a cassette in it. Oh yeah, that was fantastic stuff.
It was a challenge, and it wasn't in that down here, I think there was more opportunity. I think there were a lot more mom and pop shops kind of in the Charlotte region where I wanted to start a firm.
Mm-hmm.
I had this experience of coming out of firms and having client, marketing knowledge. But what I got a lot when I first started my business was surprised that I actually answered the phone. And that I can't tell you, it might be different today, I think, but I think appraisers a little more sophisticated now when it comes to marketing. I think out of necessity. I think back then, before appraisal management, the proliferation of AMCs and that type of thing, I think appraisers kind of had their own little mix of clients, and it was a little easier getting clients, but different.
Were you able to connect with any relationships in Charlotte that were also in Buffalo, or did you have to start from scratch?
No, I did actually. There's a lot of connections in Charlotte from Buffalo. It's almost like it's a suburb. You see a lot of bills, stickers on cars.
Oh, okay.
it's funny because a lot of the Carolina Panthers players and the current head coach is from the Carolina Panthers in Buffalo. They went to Buffalo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Oh, wow.
so it's funny how a lot of the Panthers players went up to Buffalo and coaching staff. And we have Frank Wright now in Charlotte as a head coach to the Panthers. And everybody knows he's our comeback quarterback in Buffalo. But client-wise, yeah, I did reach out to those. And it's the same. We just started, one of my appraisers moved to Orlando. And I didn't want to lose him, so I set him up in Orlando. And I'm using a lot of my current client base in Charlotte and did to get him going down in Orlando. So the way the business is, the way the mortgage business is, and the way a lot of businesses are now, it's really across the country. Everybody has a connection or regionally. It's not that difficult to start a business somewhere else. It's getting the bodies to do the work and being able to license-wise, regulatory-wise. I'm sure appraisal management companies know about this. Every state's different. Getting a license in Florida and what they require down in Florida versus North Carolina, there's some nuances. And that's one of the big differences I noticed when I moved to North Carolina from New York. North Carolina has one of the most active appraisal boards, licensing boards down here, and they're very well organized, very active. And we're in New York, and I think it's still like this in New York. It really is more a education licensing authority where they make sure your licenses are up and you've taken your classes. As far as the disciplinary board, I know that they are, but from some of my friends who are in and around the licensing board up there, I think it's less of that. It's more about monitoring the appraisers just as a function of the way the government is set up and the entity is set up. They're more geared toward maintaining and monitoring your licensing and your education.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, and I would assume when you move to a new area, it's also about getting involved in other organizations. Get to connect with people so they get to know you, you get to know them, build relationships, get business. You've done a lot of that successfully. What is one of those other organizations you've invested time in, and how have you done that?
It's been a long path. Originally, I was one of those appraisers that kind of just wanted to stay under the radar and not really, just do my job. I don't want to make too much noise. And then, 2008 happened and HVCC. There was a local group in North Carolina called NCPAC, North Carolina Professional Appraiser Coalition, and they still exist. Their local chapter president knew that I knew a lot about HVCC, and I did, and he asked me to come to speak, and I had never done that before. And I went to this little local bar, and there was a little room, and it was wall-to-wall appraisers. And there were probably about 90 appraisers in this little room, and none of them knew about HVCC. And this was right before it was going to get implemented. And I'm like, you guys, how do you not know about this? You should all be talking to your clients about it, making connections and informing them. That made me realize that there really wasn't an HVCC itself. When I realized it was going to happen, it made me realize that there was not anyone looking out for me, for my business, that I thought there was somebody looking out in DC for appraisers, and it made me realize that there really weren't. So it made me get more involved. I wound up starting with another appraiser down here, another state association for appraisers. With that, I started with a bunch of other state groups. We started a thing called the network. We weren't getting what we needed from some of these national organizations, and because of HVCC, a lot of other state appraisers started their own other state associations, a state organization of some kind, but none of them wanted to join another national body. So the idea was, let's just get together and participate in a contact list. And so we basically created a contact list of all the leaders from all these other state coalitions, and it got up to 34 or 35, where we had a real critical mass of folks that was getting recognized nationally. And one group that recognized us and started helping us was NAR, National Association of Realtors. They allowed us to use their conference room in DC for our October. We planned a meeting every October around the Aero Conference in DC. So what we did was we had our own meeting the day before the Aero conference, and we used the NAR building in their conference room to have that. And we'd invite guests. So that allowed me to see NAR's interest in appraising, how they supported us. And that got me more involved with NAR. And that's where I am now. I chair the valuation committee for NAR. And this is my 5th or 6th year being involved in NAR as like either a committee member or as a committee leader. I'll tell you, I mean, NAR is there to help appraisers. It's just we need appraisers to get involved, and they don't know what's important to appraisers. They don't know where to focus their energy, and appraisers need to help them to do that. And in turn, appraisal issues are realtor issues. Most appraisers, because they are a member of their local MLS, are realtors. So therefore, you're a member of NAR and you have access to those committees and to serve. And I think we're getting that word out more and more, but too often appraisers see NAR as not solely focused on appraisal issues. And that's the nature.
Well, their name is National Association of Realtors. It's not NARA, National Association of Realtors and Appraisers.
Right.
But I'm kind of with you on that, Pete.
I'm a realtor appraiser. I also have a broker's license, full disclosure, but any appraiser who's a member of NAR through their local association is a realtor. And you might not know it, but you do have to abide by their code of ethics too. And you have to take that continuing education as many have found out. But there's huge benefits to it. You have access if you decide to tap into it. But too many appraisers decide not to tap into it when it's readily available. And folks like me are out there to help you understand how to get involved. It's a lot of fun, and there's nothing like having a voice like NAR behind you and having access to that voice. You have to convince them, and that's part of advocacy is to, like our committee, the valuation committee is a policy committee. NAR doesn't do anything just because one person says so. You have to set policy. You have to get your fellow realtors aligned and behind the issue. And only until then can you get a movement within the organization to attack a certain issue or pay attention to a certain issue. It isn't just going to be Pete Gallo or anybody else, individual. It's a group effort, and they're really good at. Obviously, they're good at advocacy, but they're really good at filtering out and attacking things in the most effective way. They have a lot of experience to tap into on how to advocate effectively as smaller groups and as the large group. That's where I'm at. So, and I've gotten involved locally because of that. I've gotten involved locally here in Charlotte and with the State Association of Realtors here in North Carolina.
And how has that, this is one of those things, it's all the power of this podcast is to expand people's understanding or open up their minds to things that they may not either be aware of, or, you've been there, so you've walked around the corner, they can't see around the corner. What have been for you some of the professional, maybe as well personal, benefits by getting involved in another organization and choosing to take on a leadership role?
For me, friendships have really been a big part of this. I've met so many people, and so many people I feel like are family, and it makes you want to do more. When you have other like-minded people who you feel like, I have your back, you have my back, it helps you and makes you want to put yourself out there and do more. Let's face it, I've been in this business for 32 years. There's a lot I know about it. There's a lot of appraisers that don't know the difference between the ASB and the ASC. There's a lot of appraisers who do. And those are the appraisers that know how the structure is, what the appraisal foundation, the appraisal subcommittee, how all of their boards, the appraisal institute, all the big players, how they're all intertwined, how they affect each other, what they are. Anybody who has that kind of knowledge is really somebody that we need to be out there advocating, because you know where to focus. So for me, I feel like I can make that contribution. I know how the lay of the land. Being able to not only socialize, but also to advocate on issues. It's just a lot of fun. It gives you reason to create new relationships. It helps you with clients. It helps you with your business because you are more knowledgeable about things that are happening right now, and you're able to advise your clients, you're able to operate your business in that way and being prepared. And there's countless ways that you benefit by being involved as a professional, as a person. But really, I'll tell you, there's so many people that I pick up the phone and talk to when I'm feeling frustrated about something and get that feeling of support and, hey, you said the right thing, or I know I'm there, we got to do something about this, what can we do? And not just like, Pete, everybody's got that problem. Go figure it out. We're a team. I don't know how I cannot feel that way towards people that I've been through a lot with through a lot of advocacy issues, and been in rooms where we've had some tough things that we've had to face and try and overcome. You don't lose those relationships.
That is so true. And also, Pete, what's fascinating along the way is not many people have accomplished, you've done so many impressive things, but you changed from one metropolitan area to another, and over a period of about 2 decades have built one of the largest firms in a thriving East Coast city. What are a couple of the actions that you took to actually achieve that? Because most people, in their profession, as you and I both know, they're solo practitioners. You either work for a really big firm, or you're kind of you and maybe you've got somebody else. One of the large software vendors even so much as shared that, their average customer is 1.5 appraisers. I'm like, I'd love to meet a 0.5 appraiser. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that I didn't mention, and that's something from the firms that I work for in Buffalo taught me, was you have to get involved in other organizations. So I'm on the board of directors here with the Charlotte Regional Mortgage Lenders Association, and I have been since 2012. You have to get involved with your clients and with their organizations and support them. You constantly have to look for opportunities, business opportunities, but also you have to treat people that work for you in a way that makes them feel appreciated. It's so easy to lose people because they just don't like you, or they don't like what you do, or they don't like, I used to be like, what are you taking vacation for? You need to be here. This is the busy season. And I realized that I have to be grateful that they're going on vacation because they need time with their families, just like I want to get out, have time with my family. You have to make them want to come in and make them feel rewarded, make them understand, or hopefully help them feel like what they're getting out of it is fair, that you're treating them fair. It's very hard in this day and age where we have appraisers approved individually for most clients residentially. It's very hard to try and figure out how to make a firm work. And I'll tell you, it's all about your clients wanting you and your firm, having that good relationship with your client, because you could say, hey, look, I have other appraisers here. I need to be able to assign the work to whomever can get to it the most efficient way. But also we have certain appraisers that work certain areas. They know those areas a little bit better than the others. We can all do it, but this one appraiser of mine, he can get it done now. He goes there all the time. And taking that opportunity to get that appraiser approved, use that as leverage to get my business in a place where it's better for my business and it's also better for the client.
Yeah, it's truly a win-win. You and I share a similar belief. And look, the industry did what the industry did. Groups that represent the industry did do what they did or didn't do what they did. And as a result, what used to be a lot of, I will say, wisdom at the level of a firm owner, in many cases, as you kind of touched on, have been wiped out, become hamstrung because, for instance, team member A is approved with this client, but for some reason not with that client. But the assignment, like, hey, this person's right there, like they know this. Well, but they're not approved with us. You're like, but like, just some of the challenges that have existed due to regulation and other companies having their own business practices. I understand they've got them. Doesn't mean I necessarily love them, and that definitely makes it tougher, as you've shared.
Well, I keep hearing this from different places, but the cheese has moved. You hear that, hey, get with it or whatever, but it really has, when you can't run a business, when the business has really, and the business relationships have gone from you to some third party, and now you're working with a third party, and that's your relationship, you really don't have a business. The third party is the one that has the business. It's been very difficult for appraisers to overcome that. And when you don't have a business, you don't have the financial reward. You don't have a lot of the reward. You lose the ability to reinvest in your own business. You lose the ability to recruit and to train. You lose a lot of the resources that comes from truly owning a business and controlling your clientele, owning your book of business. It's too easy for an appraiser to get their certification and just go online and just fill out a bunch of profiles and get business. And that's really core problem that we've had, because we had trouble advocating on our own before, but now without the resources, without the firm, the idea of a firm owners are really the ones that advocate for the profession, because they're the ones that have the time and the money to invest in advocacy for a profession. And so who do we have now? We have the third parties advocating for their businesses, which they have every right to. But you look at all of the issues that we've had, it's really a result of not investing in the quality of the appraisers who would be your employees, who you would say, hey, I'm going to pay for these classes for you. I want all of my employees to be designated. You can do that when you own the business, and you can control and you can reinvest when you have the financial resources and the resources of the business to do that. That's been gutted, and it's very difficult to do what we do what I'm doing as a firm. I can make a lot more money for myself just closing up my office and working out of my house and doing a couple a day and making the full fee. I'm telling you, I could make more money doing that. But I have other families that rely on me now. I am able to do other things, but financially, it's not a home run. It makes more sense for me, probably just if I were just to work out of my house and just do appraisals. So a lot of that incentive's not there.
You definitely share a sentiment many people have. And, we can touch a little more on that. I think what would be informative for a lot of our listeners is, because you have applied what you've learned and worked in multiple cultures and been involved in multiple communities, how have you focused on being able to sustainably grow? Because that's one of the interesting challenges. You do a decent bit of lending work. There's a sensitivity there. There's an up and down. But you maintained a healthy culture and growing a team. What are some of the attributes you focus on to remain successful?
It's really trial and error. It hasn't been a straight upward. I've lost a lot of people. When it's busy, you can't find people to work for you. When it's slow, you can find people to work for you, but you can't get the business to have the people work. So it's kind of these opposites. When it slows down, that's the time to recruit appraisers to come work for you, because that's when appraisers are looking. But you can't go out and get work because there isn't work. So you can't go to your clients and say, I need 5 more orders. Is there any way you can send me something? No, I don't have anything. I'm sending you everything. So that's a time to go and help your clients with their businesses. I'm doing a lot of asking appraisers right now. My affiliations with real estate agents and brokers comes in handy, that I can try and help bring the two together. I think, they're both looking for each other right now. Agents and brokers and mortgage lenders need each other right now. They need access. Agents and brokers need access to mortgages, and the mortgage folks need access to agents and brokers and their business. So being involved in both circles and being kind of in between, it provides an opportunity to bring those two together. So any appraisers that are listening to this right now, go offer some of your clients to do an Ask an Appraiser to their realtor. Have a lunch, have your lenders bring their agents to the lunch, and you be an Ask an Appraiser. That's how we can help. When it's busy, so then you try to recruit people, and you're diversifying. You got to reach out and solidify the relationships you have. And it can't be asking for work. It's got to be helping create something for them. And then when it gets busy, you can't recruit appraisers because everybody's busy. So that's your time really to diversify your business. That's when you reach out to some new clients that maybe you wanted for a while, not the work. Maybe you don't want to have so much of the appraisal management company work, but you want to contact some mortgage lenders that have their own panel. So that's when you get involved in some of these mortgage lending groups, or you just start taking people to lunch or finding a way, knock on a local. People think that you can't do this, or appraisers think that you can't do this. Go knock on a door and bring some food, bring lunch to a mortgage lender and say, hey, just let me know what the contact is. I'm right down the street. I know this area. I work in this market. How can I get on your panel? And you can still figure that out. You have to start somewhere. And that's the time when it's busy to diversify your business. So then when it's slow and things slow down, you're confined to the one or two clients that you have in their business. You don't want to have any one client be more than 10% of your business. And that's ideally.
It is a wise piece of information to only have a smaller concentration of clients, plus being able to reach out and cultivate those relationships. I think one of the important things, if I can just quickly recap what you touched on, a lot of people miss out on, is the old saying that you dig the well before you're thirsty. And the way you do that isn't just dig the well, but it's that being of service. It is go help somebody else out in some capacity or another. Do more than whatever you consider competitors are doing. Maybe your competitors, most of them are doing nothing, and they're just trying to call someone and beg for orders, and that's not going to get anywhere. But as you touched on, establishing some relationship, being of service, it just opens a door so that when things do improve and someone has an ability to make some decisions, they could make favorable decisions in your direction, and therefore you're the one who is able to take care of your team members and provide assignments for them.
And that's where getting involved in some of these advocacy groups like NAR, I'm telling you, appraisers should get involved with your local realtor association, get on an MLS board, get on a fundraising committee or something, and you're going to, by default, connect with other professionals. And the agents and local agents and brokers are everything. They're the ones doing the deals. They know attorneys, they know the local, they know home inspectors, they know the builders. That's their job. That's part of their job, is to have a Rolodex of people to get a transaction from beginning to end, from a wallpaper hanger or a painter to a mortgage lender. So they want to have an appraiser. They would like to have access to an appraiser to help them. That's how you get involved. Same thing with the mortgage lender. You need to not be so worried about appraisal independence. Appraisal independence comes into effect in confidentiality and USPAP and all that. When you're talking about value on a specific property, you can go and you can talk to anybody in generalities about anything, about the profession, about appraisal principles. You just don't want to go into specifics about, 123 Smith Street. And you don't have to. And your relationships aren't made or lost on a value or on an appraisal. They can't be. And that's not what you have to offer. You have a lot to offer just as a professional who knows a little bit more about valuation. You know a lot about a lot of things, and you know just a little bit more than everybody else about data, how to use data, how to organize it, real estate concepts and principles, and how they apply, how markets react. And we were just talking about this, Michael, about chief economists. I mean, they're the ones that are able to look at data and to put it into terms that are understandable. And that's what appraisers are. And that's what we do all the time.
Completely agree with you, Pete. I mean, there's so much to drop on, so many amazing ways to be of value, to intersect in the industry. And as the industry evolves and advances, you thankfully are one of the professionals who have not only been actively involved in the appraisal profession, but you've been involved in other professional organizations representing appraiser interests. And look, that's not a paid gig. Every time you go to an NAR event, it is both contributing, volunteer leader, and that's at your expense. But ultimately, it is also the opportunity to build relationships, to build bridges, and open up doors to new opportunities and new relationships. And I'm not surprised at all that you have one of the largest firms in the Charlotte metro area. I mean, Mecklenburg County is an impressive county. It's great to see of the work that you're doing and how much that you continue to open up doors for peers.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, Pete, I mean, it's always exciting to hear kind of amongst everything we've touched on over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, source of maybe interest or optimism or outlook for the benefit of others. What comes to mind?
I think we always have to look as appraisers. We have to keep pounding the pavement, being aware of the direction. Situational awareness is the biggest. You need to know what's going on. You need to know what's happening with technology. You need to know what's happening with the players. But the one thing that I firmly believe, is that individual appraisers will always be needed. An unbiased third party validating a transaction, putting eyes on and ears on and touching a transaction will always be wanted. Whether it's wanted by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, I don't know. But certainly whoever's investing and putting their money out there is going to want a real person who has no agenda other than theirs to put their seal on a transaction. I know I've done it where I go and I've purchased cars online. There's big money, not big money, but significant money and significant business in pre-purchase inspections, which you pay a local guy who might be a dealer or mechanic to go and look. So I've paid $300 to a local mechanic that I knew was well respected to go look at a used car at a dealership and I found out that it looked great. He found out that at some point body work had been done. Nothing showed up on the Carfax, nothing. And he said, for this type of car, for the money you want to spend on this, he goes, these are some things that I found. And I didn't buy it because of that. And I was thankful. And that's what an appraiser is. You're looking at more. You're not a home inspector. You're looking at the market, but you're also touching on a lot of those other things, the physical characteristics, and with the mind of a purchaser. You have no ties. You have no other than your client's interest in your unbiased opinion. So I think that won't change. I don't think that how we do it, how we do our job might change. We might do it better, but I'll tell you, just you talk with peers and you talk about appraisals and you talk shop. Just one appraiser has so much knowledge and is so adept at doing that. And I don't think appraisers realize how much they have to offer. So I think we sell ourselves short.
I think the best opportunity to really affirm what you've just said is, whether it's at a dinner party or it's amongst a group of people who may be close by, but not directly involved in what you're doing. And like you said, I love the ask an appraiser. Just let people ask questions, and the ease and the breadth of the information that we possess and can share that helps another person, informs another person, guides another person, maybe steers another person away from a bad decision, whatever it might be. It's like, if you've been around this profession for any amount of time and invested in any significant amount in your own professional knowledge and ability, there's a lot of good you can do. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're working for an AMC. As we've heard from so many guests over season 1 and season 2, and going to hear from a number more in season 3, there's such a broad space for valuation professionals. And real estate's one of them, and real estate lending is another. And real estate lending to a federal institution is a narrower niche. As you start to back out a little bit, you get a broader perspective, a more macro approach. There's so much opportunity out there. And getting involved, building relationships in a different way, which I really appreciate, Pete, you touched on, the importance of building relationships that have nothing to do with a single real estate appraisal, but span both time as well, in this case, is geography, as you mentioned. Supporting a team member, they go down to Orlando and pick up the phone and call some people saying, hey, we're now in Orlando. They're like, no kidding, did you move? You're like, no, we're just got a team member down there. And they're like, great, Pete, work with you here in Charlotte. We'll definitely work with you in Orlando.
Right, yeah. By doing the ask an appraiser and that type of thing, the more that we can get appraisers to do that locally, wherever, the more you're helping out your fellow appraiser, because it's just another question that we don't have to answer. It's more knowledge out there in our community, in our real estate community. People understand what we do. It just amazes me how often we get asked for our list of adjustments. It's that type of thing. I mean, I've done so many asking appraisers, and that's always the number one question. And we need each other to help each other. You can't worry about getting out in front of people and what kinds of questions you'll be asked, because that's the question you will be asked. How do you, where can I just get that list? And that's a great starter, because then you go into all the different ways of how you come up with adjustments, how you look at different properties, basements, how you handle, things that you do every day. You will have a story to tell. And every local one where I've been on a panel, or I've just gone into a local office, it goes from anticipated half-hour discussion to like 2 hours. And you wind up, before you know it, you had this great talk with a bunch of local people, and you've made some great relationships, and you've made an impression. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely love it, Pete. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Amazing how quickly time goes by, and so much life and experience to put into such a short period of time. And we just appreciate you doing that and sharing that. And thank you as well for how you both lead the industry, but also make a way for those that are coming through. And as we know from so much feedback of peers that listen to these sessions, like, wow, I didn't know that was possible. I had no idea that there was such an opportunity, or that could reinvent myself or yourself so many times over a course of a career. And it just gives perspective, as you touched on, maybe to step away from the profession and come back, or to come into it for the first time, even after being somewhere else. So we're grateful for Pete being our guest here in season 2. And as always, as we move to wrap up, please be generous, please share, please go set up an Ask an Appraiser in your local market and take an immediate action on what Pete recommended. When is the best time to take action on an opportunity? Right now. So with that, definitely follow up on Pete's suggestion, and click the like button if you haven't done so already, and please be sure to share this episode of Appraisers. Pete, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Appraisers, Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing life paths and achievements of our guests. Don't forget to like us on LinkedIn and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.